Before we begin, there are a few things I need to make sure you understand. You see, no one can change what happened last year. The past is beyond our control. You have to accept this in order to move forward. But there is freedom in this revelation. Everything you do, every decision you make from now on will open doors to the future. I want you to remember this. I want you to remember this as you play your game.
There's a significant difference, really, between obviously a game script and a film script. And the biggest difference, I think, is probably the interaction. The actual process of writing is fairly similar. The outline of a story we set up fairly early on. You have to have a good elevator pitch. You can't, the story that you have has to be a strong story, and it has to be, you have to be able to get it across quite quickly as a kind of a concept. So that's the same. We do lots of concept art. We obviously work out a story. We don't go too far into the software side of it because that becomes expensive in the wrong route. So we try and test things out. And then the first part of the green light doesn't have to be the entire green light. It can be like, okay, let's develop it to the next stage. So we kind of outline the story. Then the designers come in and they work out how the branches might work. And then, as opposed to script, where that sort of just gets developed and developed, and with a script, it's kind of more like a layer on layer on layer on layer. This goes through stages in a slightly different way. So once we get to kind of the basic layout, we start talking to the dialogue writers. We're not great dialogue writers. That's not our forte. So we go to professionals to do that for us. But we need to have that structure in place first. But then they start writing in final draft in the same way that they do in the movies. However, we've developed quite a sophisticated bit of software that really helps our process go through a very different route, which is you have to be able to play a story. And that interaction, that whole idea of using choices or doing stuff, needs to be part of the script, as well as obviously just what's going on. And that needs to be tested very, very early before you start spending thousands and thousands on shooting and all the stuff.
Greetings, new fish. I'm
Captain Quark. I don't believe it. You're here. I used to dream of being arrested by you.
Now get out of here.
The writing team will vary depending on the project. So most projects it'll be one person. Sometimes the creative director will actually be the writer. On smaller projects, that's often the case. For bigger projects, we'll have one full-time writer, sometimes a couple of writers, sometimes we'll have a dialogue writer in addition. So it really depends on the size of the project. The bigger it is, the more people are going to be involved, especially when you consider all the ramifications of the story, how it's going to affect the environment. If you're doing performance capture, that's a huge, huge process, and so a lot of people are involved with the design of the characters and the modeling, the animation, every aspect of it. We actually, in pre-production now, story is the first thing we think about, and that definitely didn't used to be the case. But we didn't really have the big picture story. We'd do all the environments first, and now we do plan it. What's the story arc? And before we even get into what the environments are and what the missions are, we'll have a full story treatment of this is exactly where it's going to go, and that way we know the big beats, the big tentpole beats. These are things that must happen, and we can build around that, and we know how it's going to end, and that's the most important thing.
ゲームプレイの部分とストーリーっていうのは最初に、頭の中に明確にあります。あるいはそのユーザーがストーリーをつなげられない、あるいは理解できないっていう局面もあって、想定通りにいかない、あるいはそのモニターでチェックするんですけども、そういう場合はあるいはプログラムで、作れると思ってたシーンが作れなくなったりということがあって、その都度それ以降はディテールの部分ですけども、毎日そのゲームを作りながら若干ストーリーのラインの変更とかですね、誘導を変更したりとかキャラクターのディテールを変えたりっていうのを日々しながら、フィニッシュするっていう感じです。映画でいうとですね、物語を考えて脚本化して、その時点でちょっと変わりますけど、 撮影技法とか CG を入れるとかキャスティングで、もう一回帰りますよね。で撮影現場でシューティングのところでディテールがちょっと変わります。であとは編集だけなんですけど、ゲームはその後も、ゲームを作りながら毎日、微調整しながら、変化を加えていくというか、そういう作業になりますね。
Writing these stories, the way I do it, is a crazy amount of time. It takes me at least, I would say, 18 months. And on Detroit, the game I'm writing at the moment, it's much more than that. And it's incredibly long. It's very painful because it's like when you're a writer, you want to be inspired. So you just want to have this instinct that, oh, this is the story that I need to tell. And I have that. But then you start thinking about the combinations and the variations and the gameplay and the consequences of everything. And then writing becomes a puzzle, and you need to connect things into it's your left brain and your right brain, at the same time. And you don't want to make any compromise on the story. You don't want to make any compromise on the bending aspect and the gameplay. And you just need to find a way they can talk to each other, and in a way that is consistent, and you just want them to blend nicely.
When we started on that story, we knew what we knew, and we also knew what we didn't know, which was that we knew how to make a game, we knew how to build the general arc, the character arc, but writing truly in the sense that it's not game writing, it's slightly outside of the bounds of game writing. We wanted to partner up with somebody that actually could really help on that front. And that person was Kirk Ellis. Kirk had worked on John Adams, the HBO miniseries, had won an Emmy Award for it, an unbelievable writer, but had never played a game, ever. And it was this moment where you find someone who's never played a game and you wonder, is that the right thing to do?
Everyone all right?
Yes.
Percival, we've neutralized the threat on our side.
Good. I managed to capture one of the half-breeds. Rendezvous back at Regent.
Acknowledge. Let's go.
And we found kind of like this middle ground when we started writing where it was really easy, where he understood how each of these characters actually had to communicate to each other. But the beauty of it is that although two people really brought the script to life, it was really the work of 100-odd people that actually made all those moments matter. We made it really organic, which made everything actually, I think, more satisfying in so many ways.
With video games, it's all about an iterative approach, and it's all about teamwork. I mean, it's not a process where one writer sits down and writes the story and that's what we're going to make in the video game, because everything has to come into play. The interactivity, the player choice, gameplay, obviously, making it fun. With the first Assassin's Creed, we started out making a game about the Third Crusade. And actually, it's interesting. When I was a kid, I read The Adventures of Marco Polo, and he comes across the assassins, and we started doing research. And anyways, there's a lot of, they're a real group that existed. But the other thing we were considering is it was an opportunity to create a franchise from scratch. And so often in games, you are working on a sequel, but it's something that was never meant to be a series. So you're kind of thinking, what do I do with this? Where do I take it? And it's tough for the teams. So we wanted to create something that if we were lucky enough to create a hit, there was an infrastructure and some thought into what the franchise would be and where it would go. What we created is kind of this meta story arc and a framework really for all the future games and other products. I mean, now it's becoming a movie and it's been books and all of those things. And basically, by adding the present day and then creating a framework where it's all about pivotal moments in history and how the assassins and the Templars were behind that, that game gave us a framework where everyone can be creative and have their own creative sandbox.
Oh, bravo! What an impressive display. A pity you could not let your father live to see it. As for your mother, once I've dealt with you, I promise I'll give her my full attention.
initially I need to be able to confidently talk about it. And to me is like figuring enough of the story. Usually it's index cards. It's like the simplest versions of story beats on index cards. To see the arc, to know what the ending is, because the ending tells me what the story's about. Once that's there, is working with the design team, the art team to start developing what is the look of this thing, how does it play, and start creating assets, essentially, whether it's a gameplay prototype, a previs animation, some concept art of environments. But now you're starting to be able to visualize better the game in your head, and in talking to people, we're kind of playing the game in our heads. At the same time, the story's getting more fleshed out, still with index cards. I try to hold off as long as possible putting words on a page because I don't want to get attached to anything yet. I want a lot of ideas that we could throw away and iterate on and find the best ideas. And then at some point, it's getting closer to where we have to start shooting scenes and casting people, and that's when the first scenes get written as casting sides. And those can be shared with the team, and they reveal more of who these characters are. And then around the same time is when a pitch has come together, where with all these visuals, with all these animations, we bring the team into the theater in the studio and walk them through the entire experience of the game with as much detail as we can. And sometimes that's between an hour and 2 hours of here's how the game starts, here are who these characters are, here's how you're playing them, here's their arc, here's their conflict, here's another emotional turn. And you're going like beat by beat by beat by beat through the entire game. That's recorded and saved onto the network, so people can constantly reference that again and again. As much as we can, that tries to capture the tone of what we're after. And I find that's what helps guide the team the most, is this presentation that goes over story, gameplay, aesthetics.
As I think about Halo, I think about it as the game and the universe and all of the pieces around it. And it may be the case that there is someone in the household who's very familiar and plays the games all the time, and someone else in the household who maybe was introduced to Halo through the gameplay, but maybe spends more of their time with the books or with a web series. I think there's a different level of approachability with sort of more traditional linear media and sort of a straightforwardness of storytelling, which is a great way to get people into your universe and understanding what's important and sort of building some emotional resonance that then does lead them to explore other parts of the universe. I mean, we try and be very deliberate about, if you come in from here, how do we lay interesting breadcrumbs that may take you to this? It's part of sort of the exploration. You explore in the game, but hopefully you're also exploring across our transmedia efforts as well.